I know there are many videos online about ND filters and why you should use them for shooting video, but I thought why not make another one specifically relating to their usefulness when flying an FPV drone such as the Dji Avata 2. This will help you capture the most smooth, and here's that word again, cinematic shots that are most pleasing to the human eye. Obviously combined with the subjects, scenery, lighting, and of course your flying skills. ND stands for neutral density, and you usually get several filters in a pack, each having a different strength to cover all lighting scenarios. So you might be thinking, why not just shoot without them? We all know it can be done, but the problem with that is the shutter speed has to be incredibly high in order to get the exposure correct so the image isn't completely blown out. It's natural for the human eye to see motion blur, which you're just not going to see if the shutter speed is cranked way up. You might possibly notice some stutter, maybe some digital artifacts, and some over sharpening. Between all of my drones, I have a mixture of DJI branded filters and Freewell filters as well. So for the DJI Avata 2, I have the DJI branded ones. So you get a pack of 3, one of them is currently on the drone, that would be the ND8, although I think I'll be changing that. And you get 3 in this package, so you get ND8, ND16 and ND32. But in the Freewell one, you actually get an ND64 as well. So it'd be interesting to see if that's ever needed, because over here in the UK, I've found with the Avata drones, definitely with the first one, I think possibly with this one as well, so far I've never needed a strength higher than ND32 as of yet. As you can see, there is the filter on the drone. Here's an example of the same kind of shot, one without an ND filter in auto, apart from the white balance, because you don't want the white balance shifting all over the place while you're flying, and also one with an ND filter with the correct shutter speed, so we can pause it and have a look at the difference. Here we go. If we just pause that for a second, you should be able to see the quite blatant motion blur on the right. So next on to the shutter speed. You might have heard of something called the 180-degree rule when it comes to videography and filmmaking, and what that basically means is your shutter speed is always double that of your frame rate. So for example, if you're shooting in 50 frames per second, as I tend to with the Avata 2, you're going to want a shutter speed of 1/100. If you're shooting in 60 frames per second, you're going to want a shutter speed of 1/120. There are occasions where we might want to break this rule a little, but for now let's concentrate on the principle of it. If you were to have your shutter set to the 180-degree rule in broad daylight without a filter, your image is going to look incredibly blown out, just like this. So this is where ND filters come in. Which one you use depends on how bright the natural lighting is on that particular day. The Avata 2 has a fixed aperture of f2.8, so this is what I find works best. ND8 for a cloudy day, ND16 for a fairly bright sunny day, and ND32 for an extremely bright sunny day. Of course, I'm basing that on the kind of weather we get in the UK. At the moment, it's quite bright. It keeps going cloudy and getting bright again, but that's what I'm finding myself anyway. You will soon start to get the hang of which filters are required for certain conditions. Even now, I will put a certain filter on and, you know, maybe the lighting will change, or I'll just think that's a little bit too strong or a little bit too weak. So I'll have to swap it over before going ahead with the flight. But a bit of trial and error gets you to that sweet spot. So now we're in another location, so join me for a walk. Right, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about camera settings. So let's say you've taken your Avata 2 out and it's quite a sunny day and you've decided that the ND16 is the way to go, and that's the filter you're going to use. Next thing you're going to want to do is to put your drone into manual camera settings. This is based on the fact that I always shoot in the D-Log-M colour profile. The DJI built-in colour profile always looks great, but it is a baked-in 8-bit video file, so you haven't got as much flexibility to mess with it afterwards. Also, it can be quite contrasty in certain scenarios. 10-bit D-Log-M is the way to go because there's much more color data in 10-bit files as well. Due to the fact that D-Log-M does contain much more data, it protects the shadows and the highlights much better, therefore creating more professional looking footage. Also, I find it's not too difficult to color grade either. Okay, so I'll just quickly run through my current settings to show you as an example. You'll see it says goggles compass interference, and that'll be because I'm leaning against my car. So let's go into settings, camera. See there it says auto ISO limit 200. That's exactly what we want at the moment. And now we're going to go into these camera settings, manual, auto ISO, capped at 200 like we just said. Shutter speed 1/100 because we're following the 180-degree rule and I'm at 50 frames per second. Over here, this is pretty important, so you want the white balance to be manual. I tend to have 5,800 on a bright day in the middle of the day like this, and maybe increase it later on into the evening, but it can vary. What you can do is put it on auto briefly just to select what it thinks is the right white balance, and then switch it to manual before you start flying. And it usually works. It's usually quite accurate. Over here you might notice I shoot at 4:3 aspect ratio, and that'll be because it gives me the option to either crop in for 16:9 or vertical if I want to stick reels on Instagram or whatever. After you've got all your camera settings sorted, I recommend picking the drone up and facing it in different directions, in different light, just to double check that you've chosen the right ND filter for the job. And if that's all good, enjoy your flights and getting the best out of the Avata 2's camera. Everything I've said can also apply to other drones in principle, especially if they have a fixed aperture of f2.8 like the Avata 2 does. Just quickly mention that the Mini 4 Pro, for example, that has a fixed aperture of f1.7, which means it lets in more light. So what you'll find with that drone is where you might need an ND8 filter on a drone such as the Avata 2 in certain conditions, you'll probably need an ND16 or something on the Mini 4 in the same conditions. Also, with GPS drones such as the Mini 4 Pro and the Mavic 3, I wouldn't tend to have the ISO set to auto at all, even capped at a low number, because it's kind of different with FPV, because you're more likely to be going around things and objects that are, you know, darker areas and stuff where you need it to adjust. Well, that's all for this one. I hope in some way this has been helpful to you, and if you've got any comments, please just drop them below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you're looking to buy a new drone such as the Avata 2 or the ND filters for it from DJI, I've put some links in the description, so up to you, but if you feel like using them, then that would be awesome of you. And last but not least, if you could subscribe and give us a like if you haven't already, that would be much appreciated too. Happy flying.